You thought the game stunk last night.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say it wasn't a bad game. It just wasn't an entertaining game.
Yeah, tomato.
Josh says he enjoyed
tomato.
He would enjoy two snails playing football. So that doesn't really count.
Two snails playing football. Yeah. I would enjoy that too,
I think the game was – I thought the defenses were excellent last night.
Sure. Like if you want to dive into the sport and the details, yes, there was good things happening. It's the Super Bowl. They're there for a reason, even though it was crappy and not entertaining.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't know. It stunk. It stunk for me.
A lot of people. And John McMullen is still in Atlanta. I think, John, a lot of people look at games like that. When there's not points, they don't think the game is entertaining. I would look at it differently. I thought the game gave me something last night because it was a close, competitive game down to the final couple of minutes. Was the offense great? No. But I thought both defenses were excellent last night.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I mean, it's the chicken and the egg. Was the offense bad or was the defense great? I would lean towards the latter. The defenses were really, really good. And obviously Bill Belichick, not that he needed a stamp on his legacy, but that game plan was just off the charts. In a lot of ways, I think it's a Rorschach test for sort of modern NFL fans. I mean, they've been taught offense. And when they say defense, when they see defense, in those rare occasions they see it, they think boring. So I think it's sort of the NFL created this monster. And that's why you'll continue to see more tweaks and more things slanted towards the offense, because that's the only thing people find entertaining.
Yeah, but John, I mean, don't you think one difference for me in the game last night is the way the officials call these games? It seems at the Super Bowl the flags are stapled to the pocket a little more.
Yeah, well, the entire postseason, it's been that way for a long time. I talk about it all the time. Pete Carroll really is the first guy, I think, who sort of hung on to that and built a system around it. And when you saw the old Legion of Boom and you look at their penalty numbers during the regular season, they were just astronomical. And then as they got to the postseason, it was Pete's theory that they wouldn't throw as many flags because they don't want to be involved with deciding games. And it's true. And it continues to be true. Even as we've continued in the other direction where they're told to throw more and more flags, when the playoffs come around, when big spots come around, they tend to throw less flags.
Hey, John, the Patriots, we talked about at the beginning, I thought defensively they were outstanding, almost elite last night. What was it about their game plan that they were kind of – you wrote about, the Wonder Kid is kind of got shut down last night. Why did that happen? How did it happen?
Well, I think as often with Bill Belichick, they came in expecting one thing, and I thought myself the Patriots had been playing a very physical brand of football with their corners to this point, and they were grabbing a lot and holding a lot, sort of what we just talked about in the postseason, getting away with more. And the Rams came in expecting that, and they didn't get that. They got a whole bunch of stunts in the front seven to pressure Jared Goff, and there was zone defense behind it, and they didn't know what to do. It's not the first time. And you'll remember, I wasn't on much last week, obviously, because you were down here, but you'll go back. You'll remember I said the Rams might win the game because they have more talent, but there's no way Bill Belichick's getting out-schemed. And you saw it, and to Sean McVay's credit, he admitted he got blatantly out-coached right after the game. But it was kind of stunning just how badly he was out-coached.
Yeah, he really was, John. And I want to go back real quick with you to lousy offense or great defense, because I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I think it depends on kind of what you and Mike were saying. How old are you? What have you witnessed? How much knowledge you have? I mean, that's the obvious, and a lot of other factors on how you interpreted the game last night. I mean, if you're a diehard lover of the game like you are and you break down film, everything like that, you're going to love any game, right? I mean, Mike, I agree he can be the same way as well, but Brady was awful. He throws a terrible pass on his first drive interception. Jared Goff was a nightmare the entire game. And the MVP was a possession chain mover receiver. Gurley was a mystery. I mean, the game, there was just so many. Neither team ran a play in the red zone until the fourth quarter. The past 3-4 years, there has been no defense in this league. And now we're going to sit here today on Monday and say that was a defensive battle. It's just, from my point of view, it's really hard to get on board with that line of thinking.
Well, I think if you look at the Patriots, they move the football pretty consistently, and I thought that was the concern, is the fact that they weren't able to cash in the first half. So they moved it at times, and there was just a little bit off, and certainly Tom did not have one of his best games. Nobody's trying to spin it that way. Jared Goff was awful, you're right, but that kind of plays into the fact that I think the defense got him off his game early, and he didn't know how to adjust, and he didn't get much help from the coach, and the coach is always in his ear. So that part doesn't surprise me. But I will say something. If you look at the lowest scoring Super Bowls, and this was the lowest, all the rest of the top 5, you got to go back 40 years. So, I mean, that's how rare this is.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how bad you are offensively in this league. You generally put up, for teams like this, a bad game offensively, 20, 25 points, maybe.
Right. That's kind of my thinking with it.
But that kind of tells you it was more than just bad offense, because in a typical environment where you're having a bad day, you're still going to score points in this league. But I will criticize the NFL. If there was one Super Bowl where it screamed to have a defensive MVP, this was it. And they still picked an offensive guy. So, in Julian Edelman. Should have been Dante Hightower, should have been Stephon Gilmore. One of those two should have been the MVP of that game. But that's the thinking in this league, and that's the fan base they've created. It's offense, offense, offense. When they talked about the MVP, nobody even mentioned a defender. They're all, well, it can't be Brady. He didn't have a good game. You look at it, is it Edelman or Gronk? It's nobody. It's Hightower. It's Gilmore. But nobody thinks that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's the game they created, to take it a step further. Like you said, that's the fan they created. Well, to me, it's the game they created. That's why it's so shocking. That's why I look at it how I'm looking at it, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, you're right. The NFL's created this group and this game. You're right. So when something is sort of out of order, and an outlier, it's looked at, and the ratings are out. This is the lowest rated Super Bowl in 10 years, so clearly people were tuning out as the game wore on because they were bored.
Yeah.
And
you were down there all week, John, like I was. I don't think I saw the Rams jersey the whole time I was there.
Well, I'll tell you, it's amazing because we were both in Minneapolis as well, and the Philadelphia fans took over that city. And this was a Patriots home game. I mean, there were no Ram fans. There was nothing. They were chanting Brady during the game-winning drive. It was pretty amazing. And the L.A. Rams, they don't have a home field advantage. We talked about it during the regular season, and sort of looking ahead, if the Eagles could make a run and potentially have played in the NFC Championship game, going to Los Angeles wouldn't have been that difficult because the fans would have took over that stadium. For whatever reason, the fan base out there is just not as passionate as a lot of other fan bases.
John McMullen is in Atlanta, Super Bowl 53, as the Patriots win again. Where do you stand on Edelman? They were talking about it on the postgame last night. Many, Boomer Esiason included, think he's a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, I think he is. And, to me, it's weird with pro football, say, versus baseball, because to me, those are the two biggest Hall of Fames. In baseball, it's almost like they don't even count your postseason. They ignore it. And in football, it's sort of the same way. And I don't understand it. I mean, who cares about the regular season? And Julian Edelman has been a great regular season player. But as a postseason receiver, he's the second best postseason receiver of all time, behind only Jerry Rice. Why isn't that relevant? I think it's extremely relevant on a team that's won this many Super Bowls, and I find that more important than you name the receiver who puts up big numbers during the regular season. I would certainly look at Julian Edelman very strongly for the Hall of Fame.
John, what are your thoughts now on Tom Brady and Bill Belichick? Because it's a crazy story. I mean, today we're talking about a lot of things, day after Super Bowl, the game, the lack of scoring, everything else. But when you sit back and look at what they've been able to do, I mean, what changes for you today with this team, if anything?
Well, no, I mean, I already called it the greatest coach and quarterback tandem of all time. So None of that changes. I think, from Belichick's standpoint, that's just sort of an exclamation point on the end of the sentence, because I think it was kind of ironic, because either way, it was the oldest coach ever was going to win the Super Bowl or the youngest coach. And I think if you talk to the casual fan, if you talk to the casual reporter in my industry, they think the future of the game is Sean McVay. And I got news for you. The past just destroyed the future. And it wasn't close. So I think that puts kind of a punctuation mark on his career. Brady obviously didn't play well, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
6 Super Bowl titles, 9 Super Bowl appearances. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. But, Matt Ryan was here, obviously, this week in Atlanta with the Falcons, and he was around. And he said, and he was honest about it, the rules of this game allow quarterbacks to play deep in their career. And he's talked about playing into his 40s. In a different era, Tom probably wouldn't be able to do what he does, but you can only judge people in the era they're in.
Hey, John, let's bring it locally here. There's some news that came out over the weekend concerning Nick Foles, and then Carson Wentz, who did sit down with some reporters to discuss that article. We'll get into that in just a second, but what do we know about Nick Foles' future? There was one report that said that the Eagles are expected to pick up the option, and there was another report that said they're expected to franchise Foles. How are these connected?
Well, the Eagles obviously want to get something for Nick Foles, and they want to steer him away from teams in the NFC East. So obviously that would be the New York Giants and the Washington Redskins. So that seems to be the Eagles' goal, to steer him out. They're not going to get as much as people think by these kind of maneuvers, because once you guarantee that kind of money for a quarterback, well, the assets coming back the other way are going to drop. It's common sense. If you have to pay a guy, say, $25 million under the franchise tag, well, you're not getting a first-round pick, because they're not giving up a first-round pick and $25 million. They're not giving up a second-round pick. So the hope is they can get a third-round pick. And the interesting part of that is if he just leaves as a free agent, you decline the option or he buys out his option, they would probably get a compensatory third-round pick in 2020. So you're basically moving it up if you can trade. But there's a lot of issues with this, because if the Eagles do put the franchise tag on him and Nick signs it, they have to have the room, which they don't have right now. The top 51 rule in the offseason, you have to be under the cap when the new league year starts. $25 million makes that very, very difficult. And if you can only trade him if he signs that tender at that point. So think about that from the other end, and teams saying, well, we only got 1 year with Nick Foles. So that wouldn't be something either side, Nick Foles or a new team, would probably be interested in. So there's a lot of difficulties with putting a franchise tag on Nick Foles.
Yeah, the way that I kind of read it, just to follow the dots, connect the dots here, John, they have 5 days to make a decision, right? So the Eagles would pick up his free agent option. At that time, Foles now has a window to say, yes, I will agree, or no, I will not agree, in which he would have to pay the Eagles $2 million to become a free agent. At that point, the Eagles could then franchise him to try to trade him, correct?
Correct. Franchise tags, I think, begin on February 19th. Now, the interesting thing is, from that standpoint, I think February 11th is the date of the mutual option. The Eagles, February 11th or 12th, the Eagles have to pick it up for $20 million. At that point, Nick has 5 days to pay back $2 million if he wants out. And then that would create a scenario where they could possibly put the franchise tag on him. But again, you have a little bit of a window to sort of do a backroom deal. But if he signs that tender, it's nearly impossible for the Eagles. So you almost have to have a wink-wink with Nick Foles behind the scenes. I'm not saying that's not possible, because he's obviously enjoyed his time in this organization, and he obviously loves the city, loves the team, but he's got to do what's best for him. And that's not necessarily what's best for Nick Foles, to not only help the Eagles, but lessen the potential suitors, which would obviously affect how much money he could make.
Yeah, it sounds like so the Eagles are expected to, at this point, what I read was what you said, a third-round pick. Isn't that disappointing in the end? Like, it sounds like in the end.
Well, if you believe the reports, and I've gotten it from a couple sources, they got offered a second-round pick last year and turned it down. But that's where you are. If the more the quarterback has to get paid, the less you're going to get back as far as draft capital, because people always forget that end of the equation. It's fine to say you can give up a second-round pick, but you have to give up a second-round pick and pay the guy $20+ million. That kind of changes everything, and that's why the potential draft capital starts going in a negative direction, even though Nick played well generally at the end of the season.
John McMullen down there in Atlanta, is it clearing out, or is like everybody sticking around to get a cheaper flight?
It's clearing out. There's a few of us stragglers. It'll be completely cleared out tomorrow, and I can't wait to get back. I like Atlanta, and it's nice. It's 65 or so today.
Very nice here today.
By
the way, did you stay?
Ready to get home.
Were you at the hotel by the airport? That what is that? That Renaissance place?
Yes.
Yeah, we stayed there the last night. Well, I'm afraid of heights. That place doesn't work well with someone who's afraid of heights. The way that I'm in the elevator with Grayson, I hadn't noticed this. We're all going up the elevator, and he says, "Whoa, we're up pretty high." I turned around, and it's all glass, looking straight down.
Oh, man.
And then when you get to, we were on the 11th floor, which was the top floor of the place. Well, the doors all face each other, and then the middle is cut out so you can see directly down to the floor. And I was like,
yeah.
Whoa. Is that where they did the whole thing?
Were you guys, you should have texted me on the last night. Were you guys on the airport side or the other side?
The airport runway was literally, I felt like I could have ran on it.
Yeah, exactly. You're right looking at it, which was interesting because my room is directly across from the private jet area of the runway. So it was pretty interesting to see all the private jets with all the bigwigs coming in on Friday.
It was a good setup down there. I liked it better than Minnesota, I can tell you that much.
Well, yeah, I kind of missed the Mall of America for one thing, and the fact that it was so easy to get to. You had constant shuttles for us reporters, and everything was there. The media availability. Now you got to hop a shuttle, and it takes you 2 hours out of your day. I barely saw you guys because I'm freaking working while you're having fun.
Yeah, well, it was nice to see you the couple times we did.
All right,
pal.
I'll take your word for it.
Take care. John McMullen here on the Sports Bash.